Hello again. So this is day 2 of me talking about the Dhammapada, one of the oldest Buddhist texts. And I just wanted to add from yesterday, it's divided into 26 sections altogether. They're sections with different themes. And altogether there's 423 verses. Although there are different versions of the Dhammapada and also literally dozens of translations. So I started yesterday by talking about a few of the verses from the first section called twin verses, and they offer opposite ways of basically of us behaving. You know, we can act this way or we can act that way, and one way will lead to suffering, and one way will lead to contentment, happiness. Yeah. So I'm going to talk today about verses 11 and 12, anyway, to start with. And this is the version of Jack Austin, published by the Buddhist Society, that I used yesterday. Those who mistake the shadow for the substance and the substance for the shadow never arrive at reality but follow false aims. Those who know the substance as the substance and the shadow as the shadow arrive at reality and follow right aims. So I looked at 2 other versions of those verses. I'm not going to read them out, but instead of substance and shadow, Bhante Sangharakshita, our own teacher, uses real and unreal. He uses the words real and unreal. And another version, I can't remember now who it's by, uses truth and untruth. But I quite like these words substance and shadow for real and unreal. And so what is this about? Well, for me, it seems to be referring to relative reality and ultimate reality. So ultimate reality is truth, and relative reality is the material world that we are seeing. So nobody's going to deny that there are things around us that we can rely on to some extent. You know, if I sit on a chair, I can be reasonably confident that that chair is going to hold my weight, for example. So we're not saying, Buddhism doesn't say that nothing exists in any way, but it has what we might call a relative reality rather than a substantial or ultimate reality. So we even know from science that everything is made up of molecules, and that those molecules are alive, you could say, are shifting all the time. So change, in a way, it was very far-sighted of the Buddha to see that everything was nothing but change. And, science has proved that to some extent. But emotionally, this is the important thing. Emotionally, we just don't see it. Emotionally, we fix things. And that is why it gives us suffering, because we have expectations of people and situations that are simply changing all the time. So, if we see relative reality as just that, the substance as the substance, and the shadow as the shadow, if we can see, for example, the 3 lakshanas in everything, if we can see that everything is unreliable, that's why it's unsatisfactory. We cannot rely on it. We cannot determine how the world is or is going to be, or how situations are going to be. So in other words, we're being advised to maintain a kind of flexibility in ourselves. The more flexible we are, the easier it is to live. Because with that flexibility, we've got like an open mind. We're not relying on things being predictable. Because in a way, As long as we are relying on things to be predictable, we're going to be very nervous, very anxious all the time, hoping that things turn out one way, that things don't let us down and so on. But things are going to let us down. And although on the one hand you might think, oh dear, things are going to let us down, actually once we embrace the fact, in one of these other videos I talked about, the don't know practice. We can say we don't know how things will go. Well, we'd just be much more relaxed and much less anxious. And that's, I'm not pretending that that's easy. It's not easy. It's quite difficult to be in the flow of life and not try and fix it, not try and have answers. Yeah. So I rather like these words, shadow and substance. It describes to me the unpredictability in a way. That, yes, if you like, behind every substance is a shadow. Behind every substance, there is nothing to grasp onto. You can't grasp onto a shadow. So I want to move on now to another couple of verses that I spent a lot of time thinking about when I learnt these verses. So at one time I did learn the whole of the Dhammapada, this particular version. It probably took me years to learn, and I can't remember all of it, and I'm not going to rely on my memory right now either. Anyway, the verses 13 and 14. As rain breaks into an ill-thatched house, so craving breaks into an ill-trained mind. And the other verse that goes alongside it, as rain does not break into a well-thatched house, so craving does not break into a well-trained mind. So I want to say something about these verses. So to thatch a house well takes a lot of effort, doesn't it? Takes a lot of effort and expertise as well. And I was thinking how that's the same with practicing the Dharma. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of training and dedication. It's an art, just like thatching is. There's an art to practicing the Dharma and to practicing meditation. So it talks about the trained mind. What is this trained mind that it's talking about? And I don't think training in some ways might be a very popular word today. We want everything to evolve naturally, and maybe it does for some people. People talk often in the Sangha about, with practice, things fall away. Cravings fall away. But personally, I don't find it that easy to just hope that things will fall away. For me personally, they need a push, and they do need training. They need training in all sorts of ways. So personally, I like to make precepts for myself that encourage me or even constrain me in some ways to act in particular ways, because otherwise I can get lazy, basically. And so without being harsh, without making it too tough, I also don't think we should make things too tough for ourselves, because I think that when we make a precept for ourselves, it's important that it's achievable, that it's something that we really can do. So, for example, it's no good if you're struggling to have a meditation practice to say, right, I'm going to meditate for an hour every day this week. I'll make a vow about it, If you're likely to not be able to do that, then please don't make that kind of intention for yourself, because it's really important, I think, that we feel successful at what we set out to do. So we need to train ourselves gradually. It's like, if we're training a puppy to poo in the right place, we've got to be really patient and not have too many expectations. It's no good shouting at our puppy if it does something we don't like, when it's still trying to learn the ropes. It's still trying to learn that we want it to go in the garden and not in the kitchen or something like that. So, we have to be patient with ourselves and set up realistic goals. So there's many ways that we can train ourselves. We can have precepts for ourselves. One thing I like that the Buddha mentions is a practice that we can briefly call guarding the gates of the senses, guarding the gates of the senses. And I like this one because it acknowledges that there are temptations around us everywhere. Society encourages us to be greedy. Our whole economy is built on persuading us to buy things and to want more and more things and to want newer and newer things. And so, to practice Buddhism in any substantial way in the world is difficult. But for example, if I do online grocery shopping, I know that is simplifies my life in all sorts of ways, but it guards the doors of my senses in that I'm not walking up the different aisles being tempted by everything that's on the shelves. I know what I need. If I do it online, I get the same things, and that is that is perfectly all right, perfectly satisfying for my needs. But if I go to a store, it's like I see all sorts of new things that I haven't seen before. I think I might try this or I might try that. And yeah, we might decide that we're going to make sure we don't walk past a particular bakery, for example, that sells all sorts of nice cakes that we're going to be tempted by. We might decide that we're not going to read violent books or look at violent films, for example. So in a way, I'm talking about us taking responsibility for what we expose ourselves to. We might decide that we're not going to look at our mobile phone more than, we're not going to check it every hour, for example. These things, I'm not pretending they're easy, but they have a very big effect on our life. And you could resolve just, for example, to try something like that for one day. For one day, I'm going to put aside my mobile phone and I'm only going to look at it, once every few hours or something like that. Actually, it's good to make whatever you decide to do specific, make it really specific. So craving breaks into an ill-trained mind. So if we don't set up some kind of guidelines for ourselves, we can just get drawn in to permanent craving. And as I've said so many times, if we feed our craving, it naturally grows. So it's not a bad thing to see our practice as a training. Anything that's worth doing well needs sustained application, energy and resolve. So that's enough for today. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.